Hello and welcome to the Nerdosphere. I'm one of your hosts, joined as always by New Year's resolution, Corbin.
Uh, How am I a New Year's resolution?
Yes,
How am I a New Year's resolution?
yes,
You said New Year's resolution, Corbin.
yes.
I think he's trying to say that he wants to be you now, Corbin. He idolizes you so much that
Oh,
you're his New Year's resolution.
And we're also joined back again by the 2-week gym membership, Tim. Huh? Get it? Get it? Because it's January.
Yeah.
And you've only
also,
been on like 5 podcasts this year.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm 2 week. Like physically, I'm 2 week.
We
Makes
didn't
sense. How you
discuss
boys
it.
doing?
Yeah, good. We didn't discuss it last week, but you were out because you were sick. We had a ton to talk about with Micah and the special guest, so I actually didn't talk about where you were at. But man, you and the whole family were wrecked by this flu that's just come on.
Yeah.
Flu took a year
Yeah.
off, it's back and got the taluses.
Yeah, you're gonna probably hear me choking, losing my voice, see me mute myself a lot to cough. But yeah, we had influenza A hit the house, and in the course of 4 days, 3 of us got it, and we are still suffering through it. And we get our flu shots every year. This is the sickest I've been in probably close to a decade. I mean, it was crazy. I had 103-degree fever for like 5 straight days. It was brutal.
Yeah, there's nothing like everyone whenever they start to feel not great, they're always like, "Oh, I have the flu or some shit." And then you actually get the flu and you realize you never had the flu. Like
Yeah, that's true.
The actual flu kicks your ass so hard. It feels like death.
I was joking with a coworker today. I said, I was kind of taking a step back. I was like, man, it'd be nice to get sick. I'd like to have a day where I just like sleep and chill and like watch movies and maybe play some PlayStation and hang out. Oh no, like none of that happened. There was no TV watching. There was no PlayStation. There was literally like 23 hours of sleep a day. And the hour I was awake, I felt like death. I mean,
Yeah.
it was crazy.
Yeah, the flu sucks donkey butt.
What really
The
sucks is
flu
when you get
sucks
to
as much as
coughing
Abby
so
Rad.
hard that it makes you throw up. So I didn't have like the stereotypical flu where you're like, throwing up a ton. I was coughing up so much gunk that I was in the bathroom dry heaving. I couldn't eat. I mean, it was gnarly.
Yeah, it's rough, man.
Gross.
Mm.
I actually just got an inhaler from my doctor today for my chronic winter cough that I seem to always get. We think that it might be allergy related. Some people get the sniffles and all that shit during the spring, and Corbin just might get the dry, unproductive cough that makes it hard to live.
The one that's kind of like in the back of your throat. Yeah. If you breathe too deep, you get a little coffee.
Yeah.
Cough.
You get a little cough, and then you do a little vomit because you're coughing so hard. And then you're like, I'm trying to talk. And then you're wheezing, coughing. Pokemon reference. But yeah. I am still in a brace. I had to get a referral to another doctor to have it examined some more. More than likely, I will have to do physical therapy, which sucks. But I have some wall exercises to do where I take my arm and I walk it literally up the wall until I can't walk it up any higher. And it's not pleasant.
Speaking of your shoulder, do you want to share your fallen and can't get up story with the audience or no?
Yeah, actually, I do. Because I was rather shook that Clayton and Tim didn't comment on this. And Clayton said he actually just didn't even see it in the text chain. Tim, I'm surprised, didn't see it. Or Tim didn't comment on it. I assume he saw it.
I'm assuming I was like in the verge of my own personal death through flu season. So,
okay. So for those who listen to us on a weekly basis, you all know that I had dislocated my shoulder. I'm in this like compression sling, and going to the bathroom just like as a sucky venture as it is. Anyways, so I'm pooping in the middle of the night, and I'm scrolling through TikTok as I do, and my legs fall asleep, which like can happen, if I'm on there for an egregious amount of time. But I will be the first to admit this was not one of those times. Like I was not in there for like 20, 30 minutes. I was like at the 10-minute mark. Like this was going to be probably one of the quickest dookies I've taken in the past 5 years. But my legs
10 minutes, quickest dookie in the past decade.
I said what I said. But my legs, both of them, fell asleep to a degree that it was like from hip bone to toe, completely dead. And when I stood up from the toilet, I immediately rolled my ankle because I didn't step down correctly because I couldn't feel my leg. And you hear this little squishy noise in my ankle. God. And I immediately dropped to the ground because this is the ankle that I actually ripped a tendon in when I was a senior in high school. So like it rolls easy anyways. And I was like, fuck, I probably messed up my ankle now too. But as I fell to the ground, out of instinct, I caught myself with my bad arm. And that hurt. And so then I just ended up falling to the ground, laying in the bathroom floor in complete agony. And I was in there for at least 10 minutes, just in pain as my arm was throbbing and my ankle kind of hurt and I couldn't move my legs because they were asleep. And in that moment, I realized I'd rather die here than call for Morgan to come help me out of the bathroom.
And you're bare ass at this point still too.
No, my gym shorts are up.
So you got the shorts up at least.
I got the shorts up and I stood up and I fell. And then I realized, if you've ever wondered on the utility of Life Alert, you should probably just invest in it because it would have been very useful in that moment. I've never been so scared.
Would have been super helpful for it to be like that episode of Boy Meets World where the firefighters just break into your house and just start chopping up stuff for no reason. All they just lift you off your bathroom floor.
All I gotta say is thank God you're not one of those creeps that stands up and wipes, because it would have been exponentially more tragic if you would have fallen down as you stood up to wipe, laying there shit all over yourself, 10 minutes. Oh,
I feel like at that point, the move is to just drag yourself into the shower and turn it on. And just like lay in the water as you're splashing soap on yourself.
Oh, gosh.
So that was my traumatic life experience last week.
Well, that's a shame.
That you both ignored.
That's a shame. Well, if you didn't know, this is the Nerdosphere. We're a podcast that discusses everything from the big screen to the small screen and anything in between. If you can nerd out about it, we're going to talk about it. If you like what we do, scroll on down and give us a rating. If you're on an Apple device, this is nothing new for you, but if you're on Spotify, guess what? They've added the ability to rate things. So give us a rating if you listen to us on Spotify. We greatly appreciate you. If you really like what we do, go over to patreon.com/the Nerdosphere, where you can learn how to support the show and earn exclusive perks for as little as only $1 a month.
Only $1 a month?
That's right, only $1 a month.
Wow.
Tonight, we will be discussing 2021 and all the things that we enjoyed and some things that we didn't enjoy. We each have brought 3 things that we think are winners and 3 things that we thought were losers, and we'll go round robin and discuss them. Hopefully we don't have too much overlap. I've got some backups in case we do. I've got an honorable mention for sure that I want to talk about. And I think at the end, we're going to talk about what our consensus is for the winner of 2021.
We talked about doing that at the beginning of the show.
We did, but I forgot, and now we're doing it at the end. Because I've already said it. Corbin.
Well, I'm not waiting till the end to say what I have to say, which is how crazy is it to think that we started 2021 with WandaVision and then ended it with No Way Home. And also how long ago WandaVision feels.
It feels like it was so long ago. Like you just said, we started 21 with it. I'm like, nah, that was 20. It's crazy. 2021 like disappeared in the blink of an eye.
It also seems like a lifetime ago.
It does.
I was looking at the movie lists of like what I wanted to choose, and I realized there are some movies that I watched in the basement of Tim's home. And then I was like, oh, I lived in Colombia for more than half of that year.
Yep.
But it feels like so fucking long ago that like even was a thing. It's wild, to say the least.
Definitely wild. Well, since you're
Really
so
wild.
eager to speak, why don't you start us off, bro? What's your first thing that you're a winner of?
The first thing that's a winner. What was it? You put me on the spot, and now I don't know what it was. Let me see here. I had a list on my phone. Oh, yeah, I know what I'm going to start off with. The fucking Kingsman. The Kingsman was such a delight. It is by far probably the best of all the Kingsman movies, at least very closely tied with the first one. Reimagines the franchise in a different way. The action is particularly slick in this film. The music choices are really well done. And also, there is a post-credit scene, and they definitely seem to be setting up the prequel movie as a potential separate franchise from the Eggsy and Harry storyline. Now, we know the next Kingsman movie that Matthew Vaughn is going to make is going to be Kingsman 3, which will be the conclusion of the Eggsy and Harry storyline. But they definitely seem to be setting up this prequel era with Ralph Fiennes to be something big, because there is a very minor character who becomes Lancelot, and it's Aaron Taylor Johnson, and he has like 5 lines in the film, and I feel like you just don't have an actor like that in a movie like that if you don't have intention of using him again.
Just a throwaway. Yeah, that wouldn't make sense.
So
this is technically a Marvel film, right?
technically it's not. Well, I mean, technically, I guess, yeah, it is, because it's a Marvel comic.
I wonder if part of that's because didn't Aaron Taylor Johnson have a multi-film Marvel deal?
So he did.
Same umbrella.
I will say this though, Marvel Studios did not produce this movie. Neither did Disney. This was a Fox film, which is now Disney because of the acquisition that happened.
Yep.
But also Aaron Taylor Johnson played Kick-Ass in Matthew Vaughn's film. So there definitely is that kind of directorial actor relationship that we see in films all the time.
Yeah.
But like I said, you just don't have an actor like that, and with no intention of using him again. I actually cried during the movie, which I did not expect to happen in the Kingsman movie. Like, there's a full range of emotions. But yeah, it's a fucking ride. If you enjoyed the first movie at all, like, this movie, you're going to fucking love, and it's well worth your time.
Nice. This was on your most anticipated list coming into the year, I feel like, as well. So
it was. Now, I will say if you remember the trailers for this movie, there was one that came out early on that seemed like it was a little bit more gritty and grounded of a story than the previous ones. That's not the case. It's very much still has kind of the wackiness, for lack of a better term, that's in the other movies. So it's important to know that you aren't walking into like a tonally revamped movie. But it's fucking good. And plus, like, it's historical fiction about World War I and like the assassination of Franz Ferdinand stuff. Like, it's a good time.
nice.
I'm excited to see it. I just have other things I need to watch first.
No, you don't. Stop seeing Spider-Man, weirdo.
Can't do it.
Just go see
won't stop.
Go see the Kingsman. You, of all people, you would love the Kingsman. So go watch it.
You don't know me. You don't know what I like. All right. You've given us a winner. Now give us a loser.
Dear God, what? A loser?
Yes.
Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is probably one of the worst things that I've not only seen this year, but it's just a disgrace to cinema. Like, you think about all the movies that have a hard time getting made, and then you realize that this dumpster fire of a film got produced and made and went into pitch rooms, went into writers' rooms, went into production, editing, and someone along the line was like, this is it. We've made something here. It is so bad. I would have walked out of the theater if I had a choice, but I was in the basement of Tim's home, kind of tipsy.
Yep. We had terrible taste in movies at my house. So I feel like we struck out left and right, and that movie was terrible.
What was worse about that movie is they let us on. We all thought it was going to be good. The marketing was fantastic.
It looked great. And the opening sequence is amazing. The opening sequence where you have Sub-Zero versus Scorpion and like old time Japan, like
that should have been the whole movie, honestly.
It was incredible. And then they throw you this curveball where it's like, okay, now we're going to introduce a character who's not in any of the video games, and you're going to try to become emotionally attached to this person that you give two shits about. It was awful.
It was very strange. Good choices, Corbin. Tim, are you ready for your choices?
I'm ready. I'm prepared. I sat down, tried to make my list, and I keep coming back to A Quiet Place 2 as being one of the best things I saw in 2021.
I knew you'd pick that one.
We did an entire podcast on it. If you guys want to know an in-depth breakdown of how we feel about the film, check out our previous podcast. But
forgot that came out.
For my money, the opening sequence to A Quiet Place 2 is cinema perfection.
Oh, that's hard.
It's cinema perfection. It does not get much better than that opening sequence in A Quiet Place 2. I also feel like it's really hard for sequels to do well in today's world. I think this movie did as well, if not better, than A Quiet Place. So A Quiet Place 2, if you haven't seen it, you're missing out. You can go stream it on Paramount Plus, and it is absolutely worth the time.
Yeah, if you're a fan of the first one, it's definitely worth your time. So, for sure.
Yeah. So my dud is also a horror sequel that we've talked about on this podcast. And it is Halloween Kills, which was on my most anticipated list for 2 straight years. I was that big of a fan of the soft reboot that we got in 2018 or whenever it was. And Halloween Kills shit the bed. They tried to make a John Wick film out of a Halloween film, and the sequences where you've got a angry mob of people circling around Michael Myers and Michael Myers systemically killing them one at a time, it did not work. The movie wasn't good. It took too much time trying to make some political statement about groupthink that does not fit well inside of a Michael Myers movie. I am still heartbroken at how bad Halloween Kills ended up being.
Yeah, I was very disappointed as well, because me and you were huge Halloween fans, and we were both really looking forward to this one. Holy crap, was it just the biggest letdown.
It was awful. Absolutely awful.
Made even worse because of how good the reboot was, man.
You would almost think that it wasn't made by the same people. It was so different.
Yeah,
as far as tone and quality.
Exactly right.
I think Corbin made a comment during our podcast that it felt like many of the main players were like community theater actors, and he nailed the nail on the head when he said that. Like,
for sure.
They had no right being on a big screen of this magnitude with this iconic of a character. It was a disgrace.
Yeah, it was garbage.
All right. Well, let me give you guys my first winner. I'm going to start things off with Dune.
Whew.
Dune was the realization of one of my oldest nerd loves. I've talked about this several times on the podcast, but my first step into like full-fledged, I'm making a choice to get into like something that's considered nerd property, was Lord of the Rings, and then basically at the same time, Dune. And I've been waiting patiently for a Dune something my whole life, and boy, did we get something spectacular with the Dune movie. It is cinematically gorgeous. It's probably the best looking movie of the year. The story adaptation is eerily accurate. Man, just everything about it is beautifully acted. Just everything about it was just so good for me, and I had to say this one first, because man, what a time to be alive if you're a fan of Dune, because that's so great. Oh gosh,
I'm so thankful that Dune did well, because
Same.
if you guys remember, there was a lot of talk from, I think it was the producer or the director, straight up said, if this movie doesn't perform, we will not get any more Dune films. Like I will just, and that would have been tragic because the movie was, it far exceeded my expectations. It's gorgeous. The story was good. The action was great. I can't wait for the second installment.
Yeah, this would have been on my list if I knew that Clayton wasn't already going to talk about it. Like there, I talked about this with Yuri Lowenthal when he was on the podcast. But like when you think about the theater experience and what that actually means to you as a moviegoer, Dune is the encapsulation of everything I try to talk about. Like you go in and you are completely transported somewhere else. You are disengaged from the real world 100%, and you walk out of the theater and you haven't quite transitioned back to reality yet. You're kind of like stuck in this limbo of like, I just witnessed something so immersive and so like mentally tantalizing, and you're just kind of like in shock for an hour.
Yeah.
And Dune was that for me. Dune reminded me why I loved to go to the movies.
Yeah, it was definitely a must-see in the theaters, and we talked about that several times back when it was out in theaters, because this is one of those HBO Max same time situations, and that's why everything was, if we make enough money in theaters, we'll continue it kind of thing, because it was releasing at the same time on HBO Max.
Yeah.
But the people came out, they saw it, so... All right.
No.
My first loser that I want to talk about is another thing that's just very near and dear to me, and it's being incorrectly represented on screen. The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. This was a highly anticipated property for me. The Wheel of Time series is very near and dear to my heart. It's probably my all-time favorite book series. Brandon Sanderson's works have started to kind of creep up on that, but The Wheel of Time is just phenomenal. But the show is just not that good. It's not that good. They make a lot of unnecessary changes and additions. The look of it is just not right. I've said this several times to people off cast and even on our Wheel of Time Watchers podcast, but it feels like whoever was the set designer, concept designer, wardrobe designer, they either weren't given the descriptions or like the source material, or they went in saying, I'm gonna just do what I feel I want to do, because nothing looks like it's out of the book. And Robert Jordan is a very descriptive author, especially when it comes to like clothing and scenery. So it should have been very easy at the very least to make it look like the Wheel of Time. And I keep coming back to, I think I could have maybe swallowed some of the other decisions and issues that I have if it looked like the Wheel of Time, but it doesn't even look like the Wheel of Time. So I still have some hope for it. I was talking with one of our patrons during a D&D session actually last night. Shout out to Ronnie. He actually is enjoying it, and he's watching it again and kind of going through a second rewatch with a different viewpoint than the first go through, and he's finding that he really enjoys it. And he had talked about some stuff that I hadn't really thought of, but apparently COVID really hurt the filming of that show. They had to keep starting and stopping. Apparently they ended up having to go back for reshoots, but they couldn't get back to the area where they shot, so they had to like make all these reshoots in a different spot and try to make it work. And then, as we all know, one of the actors of the main characters is being replaced, and apparently that happened earlier on than we're led to believe, because the reason his character kind of makes some decisions towards the end of the series is because that actor left. So I'm hoping, I say all that because I'm hoping that is the reason we got this almost dumpster fire of a first season, and going forward we'll get something that Wheel of Time people deserve. So
yeah, as someone who has never read the books but I've heard you talk about them for years, and coming into it as someone who likes fantasy but not really having an anchor to the source material at all, this show is so not worth anyone's fucking time. Like, it feels to me like a shitty sci-fi channel show. Like the way the sets look, the way the costumes are, the way the special effects are even done. It is astounding to me that it has the money behind it that it has, especially when you take in consideration that there is no well-known actor attached to this show. So I think it does a terrible piss poor job at transporting you to a new world where you're feeling like, man, there's all this history. Everything looks so cool. Like I want to know more. Whereas The Witcher is a show, like I know we've talked about this on the cast and you have on the Wheel of Time podcast, but The Witcher has done such a better job at just bringing you in. Like there's a moment in season 2 of The Witcher where Geralt is fighting the weird like dragon thing that's brought through Forth of Monolith.
Yeah.
And they're at the, you know, the castle for the Witchers and stuff. And in that moment, I was like, this is such a grand scene of like him being on this walkway with this castle behind him, fighting this dragon that looks like exceptionally well done. You don't get anything like that at all in the entire 8 episodes of The Wheel of Time. Nothing.
No, it's very, very sad. And what's even stranger and what makes me want to put it in this loser slot even more is how weirdly popular it is. I don't know if it's just a very vocal minority, but as far as time watched, this thing is blowing numbers out of the water. People are really consuming the Wheel of Time. And it saddens me because it's not the Wheel of Time. Like I want people to be consuming Wheel of Time, but I want it to be good. So
yeah.
Anyway,
it's not good.
Yeah,
not good.
All right, next round. Give us another winner, Corbone.
Okay, I'm gonna take things in a little bit different of a direction.
Oh God!
And for me, my winner is Demon Slayer Mugen Train.
There you go.
This movie, well, for starters, I had caught up on Demon Slayer this year, finally, because we wanted to, on Anime Ultra, our anime podcast, have a additional episode a week where we are doing some sort of episodic breakdown of the ongoing anime that we love. So that way we can be more in the thick of it with the community instead of always coming in after the show has ended to like watch it and then talk about it. And so with that meant I had to watch Mugen Train because I wanted to watch the movie as opposed to just watching their retelling in season 2. And this movie was gorgeous. It exceeds so many expectations when you go to watch an anime film in theaters. Typically an anime movie is not truly canon. And if it is canon, they have to do a lot of kind of retconning at the end to put things back into place to where it would make sense for the characters to be. My favorite My Hero movie had to do that. It's the second one. And it has like some of the best action you will ever see. And it's like super emotional, but they had just like completely undo everything that happened so that the story could like go back onto the tracks and be where the show was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of an example of how something can be canon, but doesn't really progress anything. It's just like a one shot. Whereas Demon Slayer Mugen Train 100% was the next installment of the story. So that was really interesting to consume because it's never happened before in an anime film that's based off of a show. And with it, the art was gorgeous. It was very emotional. I cried like a baby at the end. So yeah, for me, that movie really kind of left an imprint for me because it was an emotional experience and it really kind of set the bar for any new anime that wants to do a film.
Yeah, Demon Slayer is already so good. Ufotable is the production house behind that, and they are kind of top tier right now. You got Ufotable, you got Wit, you got Mappa, but Ufotable, like they do the Fate series, which is just, man, it's so well animated, and then the Fate movies. I didn't tell you this, Corbin, but I got those on my Vudu now if you want to watch them. They're very well animated. And Demon Slayer just kind of takes that animation that's so good in the Fate series and just, it's even better. Every frame, you could freeze frame any part of that show or especially that movie, and it could be a work of art. Like that's how detailed and immaculate the animation is. And, you know, the story's good. And let's not forget, it set a crazy ton of records for an animated film. In Japan, it's like the highest grossing film of all time.
It beat Spirited Away.
It beat Spirited Away, which is crazy to think about. In the rest of the world, when it stacks up against other animated movies, it's beating all of these long-time running animated movies that have held records. So Demon Slayer is something special, and it definitely deserves to be on the list. So I agree.
Yeah. But as for a loser, honestly, there have been quite a lot of not great movies I've seen this year. But rather than kind of kicking the dead horse while it's down, I kind of wanted to put something that was mediocre on my loser list to show that we aren't just complete biased fanboys, and that I can be really disappointed in a fandom that I hold dear. And so on my loser list, I'm putting Black Widow. Black Widow was a movie for me where I walked into the theater excited to finally have an MCU film off of the high of some really great moments of WandaVision and Loki. And like, we're finally getting an MCU movie again in theaters, with a character that arguably you could say should have had a movie like this before this point, but hey, we're getting it now. So that's all that matters. And I walked in and my expectations were not incredibly high, but I think that they were appropriate. I wanted to walk in and I wanted to have a story with Natasha that made me feel emotionally invested in the character, that would add value to rewatching the MCU in past tense, much like Rogue One did for A New Hope. I wanted it to understand how unique of a placement it could have as far as tone goes. You have the mapping of the Bourne Identity series being like right there. That's Black Widow. Make that what you're doing. And instead, I got a throwaway story that all it does is set up Yelena, which could have been done in a few moments of conversation, because the Yelena we get in Hawkeye, I don't have carryover emotional investment from Black Widow. I have emotional investment based on what she did in Hawkeye.
Right.
And the story felt cartoony to me. I understand we are in a comic book universe. I am okay with the concept of having these shadow organizations existing. But just the way it was presented and the way that the characters interacted in action sequences, it just felt too disconnected from the realism that Marvel does try to toe, of like, we have an emotionally grounded story with fantastical elements, and that was what makes our stuff so unique. So for me, Black Widow was a throwaway story that you literally don't need to watch at all to understand anything moving forward, and that's just a crying shame for me.
Yeah, I wasn't blown away. I didn't have the visceral negative kind of reaction that you did, but it's also like, I'll never watch that movie again, probably. There's no point. So
yeah, I mean, when you think about the movies that you almost have to watch that aren't great in the MCU for the story, you think of like Captain Marvel is one that you kind of have to watch moving forward, especially with Talos and things like that, having a prominent nature in Secret Invasion. But the Black Widow story, you could not watch that at all, and you're not going to feel lost when you watch Hawkeye, which to me is impressive of the script of Hawkeye and impressive to the presence that Florence Pugh brings to the role of Yelena. But in an ideal situation, you should feel this like connection to the carryover, which you don't need to have.
What? This is
crazy. So,
all right, Tim, back around to you, my friend. Give us your next winner.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with a pair of Netflix series. The first one is probably the most popular television show of 2021, and that is Squid Game. I need to check and see if that actually came out in 2021. It definitely came out. It came out in 2021. And I went into the show after the hype had been palpable for probably a month. You guys had both already completely binged it. I tried to convince my wife to watch it for a solid 2 weeks.
We had even done the podcast, I think, before you watched it, didn't you? because
I
we
think we
recorded
did.
it without you. And
Yeah, I think you guys
couldn't listen
did.
to it because you didn't want to be spoiled.
Yeah, exactly right. And I finally just turned it on, and within 30 minutes, Jody's completely hooked, which is really weird because she generally does not like things that are subtitle based. I did not do the dub version. I tried the dub version. We kind of went back and forth at first. The dub was just terrible in my eyes. It was almost unwatchable.
The
But
dub is as bad as the English investors at the end the entire time.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. The dub is that bad. And in fact, this is a tangent, but I'm still shocked that after the show had this much hype, that Netflix didn't rush to redo the dub in the height of this show being as popular as it was. Like, I'm really shocked they didn't say, okay, we're going to go and get a couple of legit, maybe not the biggest names, but we're going to get some legit voice actors, and we're going to make a legitimate dub while this thing is blowing up. I think that's what I would have done if I was in charge over at Netflix. But regardless, Squid Game is like the most captivating television show that I've watched in a very long time. It pulls you in. It's relentless. It's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. It's devastating. You run the gambit on your emotional feelings with Squid Game. It was probably the most hyped television show of 2021, and I think it deserved every ounce of hype that it got. It was that good.
Definitely. It was like 2020 February, March, April, everybody's lockdown like level hype behind stuff that was coming out at that time.
Yep.
This year. Like, it just broke into pop culture. Everybody was talking about it. Mr. Beast did this huge flippin' parody of it for his YouTube channel that ended up getting even more views than the show did, and it just furthered like this pop culture integration of Squid Games. The show is phenomenal. If you're sleeping still on Squid Games, turn it on. It is so good.
Oh, I mean, it is the most addicting thing that I've watched this year by far. We could have sat down and watched that entire series in one day if we really wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
And that's saying a lot for where Jody and I are. There's not many shows we can sit down and say that about anymore. But Squid Game, definitely worth every ounce of hype. Don't be afraid if you're like my wife was and turned off by the idea of subtitles. Don't be afraid of it, because this is absolutely worth reading on screen. It is. I can't say enough good things about Squid Game. Yeah. I really can't.
And it shows again the kind of quality that we're getting out of South Korea for movies and content. They really do deliver good movies and good shows. They really do.
I mean, they brought it on every single level. It's as beautifully shot as can be. The color palette is incredible. It's gripping. It's funny. It's devastating. It's brutal. It makes you question, how would you react in those situations? If you could sit down and watch a show that runs you through every single one of those things, it's a bona fide hit in my eyes. And Squid Game is no exception.
Yeah.
Plus, that old man was had always wanted to be an actor, and that was his first role.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Okay, so going to a dud, sticking with Netflix, I've got to go with season 2 of Tiger King. Going to the 2020 Netflix show that was essentially 2021 Squid Game was Tiger King. We were in a time when we were all forced into quarantine for the first time in pretty much everybody's life, where you're forced into quarantine. No going out, no restaurants, no anything. Almost everybody's working from home. And out comes Tiger King. And it was the craziest train wreck that I had ever seen. The most entertaining show that you can imagine. And season 2 comes out of nowhere, really. And I couldn't finish it. Just being completely honest. We watched like 4 or 5 episodes and we're like, all right, like, okay, like it was kind of interesting to hear more on why Carol Baskins is a piece of shit and killed her husband, but it really didn't add anything. It was missing Joe Exotic. He was what brought Tiger King season 1 to its glory. I was super let down with the second season of Tiger King. Very, very disappointed with it.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, I didn't finish it either.
I did finish it. If you only made it to 4 or 5 episodes, Tim, you might as well just turn it back on because there's only 5 episodes in season 2. For me, it was interesting to see some follow up because there were some like unanswered questions or like wondering like what's going to happen to these people, but like we didn't really get any more with Joe Exotic. We got some behind the scenes of his team trying to get him his pardon, which was it was interesting, but not something that needed to be probably spent that much time on. We didn't get any of Doc. What's his name? We didn't get
Doc
any
Antle.
of Doc Antle. We didn't get any of him, and
He
his
got
stuff,
arrested though.
Yeah, but his stuff would have been so interesting. Why not? You could have added that story in. Like it's so interesting.
I think they're making a documentary on him though.
Just about him.
I think. Oh, so.
You're right. I think I've seen a preview now that you say that. But yeah, we spend most of the time with those flipping weirdos that took over Joe's park, and I just really don't like those people. I liked finding out a little bit more about the Carol Baskin mystery and where it's at as far as progress. They are making progress on the investigation, but all in all, it probably didn't deserve 5 more episodes, and could have just done like a follow-up episode just to show. Could have done
exactly what we got about 10 months ago when they did the follow-up. They added 1 extra episode to the end of season 1.
Yeah,
I think you could have probably done that with maybe 1 or 2 episodes and it would have been fine. But to be branded as season 2 of the Tiger King and give us that level of quality, complete letdown.
Yeah.
Massive
it probably, honestly, we're banking on him getting released. And then after they had like a budget cleared and he didn't, they were like, well, shit, we have to spend this money and to make something.
That's probably exactly what happened, because the first episode, isn't it the first episode that's kind of about that? It definitely seems like that's the way it was going, but he didn't get the pardon, so got to do something.
Which is a crying shame, because we all know that Joe Biden ain't going to release him or forgive student loan debt like he said he was going to. So
you're learning. Politicians lie.
It's like they all have their own agenda after they play the public. I don't understand.
Whoa.
And also, like, Nancy Pelosi is like, why shouldn't Congresspeople and their loved ones be able to invest in the stock market? It's a free market.
Yeah.
With her 700% return, historical, some like astronomical figure that's impossible to reach unless you have inside trading happening.
Yeah. Dear God. Hate them all. I just hate them all.
Yeah. All right. For my next round, I'm doing another pair of Netflix things as it happens. My second winner is Arcane, the League of Legends show. CGI animated show about some of the characters and places that you see in the League of Legends universe. This show is as close to perfect as you can get. I cannot say anything bad about this show. The animation is unique. It's clever. It's gorgeous. The color palette is gorgeous. The star-studded voice acting cast does a phenomenal job bringing these characters to life. The story is deep and compelling and layered. It was released in 3 episode arcs for a total of 9 episodes, and the story just continues to build on itself and just really deliver a nice cliffhanger as we eagerly await for season 2. I am not a League of Legends fan. I've never played League of Legends. I know what it is, but I have never played it or been interested in it as a game. This show is phenomenal. If you are at all interested in that kind of aesthetic, like steampunk, magic meets technology, fantasy kind of situation, gorgeous animation, this show is for you. And it's well deserved in its popularity and its praise, and it is well worth your time if you watch a trailer of it and it looks anywhere remotely interesting to you. You will enjoy it. It is phenomenal.
For 90s babies out there, think Treasure Planet, just sadly without the Goo Goo Dolls.
All right, and for my Netflix loser on this round, I'm going with Jupiter's Legacy.
Oh shit, that came out in 2021?
Yep. Isn't it so weird thinking about some of this stuff? This is a show that came out based on Mark Millar's Image comic of the same name. Follows a family of people who were like the first people to gain superpowers in this universe, and then like their kids are born and get some powers, and as that happens, more and more people kind of start awakening with some powers. This show was terrible. The effects were bad, dialogue was bad. The idea and the lore was really intriguing, and it kept me coming back, hoping that we would, like, I really wanted to see how they got their powers, really wanted to see things develop, but we just didn't get any payoff. It was a slow burn, and it just wasn't worth my time or anyone's time because it has been canceled. So
did not look great. Some of the special effects remind me of like Supergirl.
Yes,
CW.
It was legitimately CW level effects. So,
which just goes to show, I know that Tim especially has kind of championed this thought on the podcast numerous times, but Netflix, for as much praise as their home run of a show or movies might get, there is like 50 times that amount in just shit that they produce. Like Netflix is not this like service you go to for guaranteed quality. It's always a gamble.
It's a lot of content for the sake of content, which is fine to an extent, but when you market these shows and these movies as being, you know, absolutely incredible, and you get into it and it looks like a college student made it on a shoestring budget with community actors, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's literally probably 5-1. Like, we watch something on Netflix, 500% of the time it's going to be terrible, and then maybe I'll find something that's good.
Yeah.
And that seems to have been their strategy this whole time, is we will just make content and we know some of it will be good and that will be what we can use to sell. It's just surprising that with how like Netflix is aged, it is the leader in streaming, it's setting the pace. They've had a lot of successes. You think at this point they would stop that strategy and really focus and double down on projects that they think are going to be spectacular. Because with all the money that they waste on the shit, imagine if that money was reallocated to some of the projects that are already great. Like, imagine if The Witcher had another $50 million per season. Like, you would take that show to a whole nother level, and it's already good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the casting's well done, but you could have bigger name actors. So that's like, anytime I talk about budget and I compare Wheel of Time to The Witcher, and I talk about how Wheel of Time has no big actors, I feel like it's really important for people to realize that, like, not only are the budgets pretty similar, but you're paying Henry Cavill to lead your show,
right?
Which takes a good chunk of money.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Corbin, let's go around for our last set.
Okay.
Winners and losers.
If we have honorable mentions, are we doing it here? Are we doing that after
we'll
the last set?
We'll kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do it at the end.
Okay. So I really struggling between which two I want to talk about. I really, really, really wanted to put Hawkeye in this because it's so worth everyone's time. The internet kind of has dogged on it a little bit.
I'm surprised at how many people, even real life people that I know, have said that they can't get into Hawkeye. It just
it's so charming. It's so charming. The dialogue is peak dialogue for like anything you could watch right now. It's so well done.
Yeah.
But I think what I want to focus on is actually Loki, to talk about some mechanics that the internet doesn't understand, because it's in the same vein of like people not still understanding how the spell works in No Way Home.
This show is a winner. Now let me explain the entire plot.
No, just because like I've seen a lot of people online talk about how like it's Doctor Strange that has broke the multiverse and stuff, and like where's the TVA, and Loki is so inconsequential because of like what happened in No Way Home, and it's another example of like why the Marvel shows don't matter. First of all, Loki is so fucking charming. This is like a show that at first glance should be riddled with plot holes because you're dealing with time travel, the concept of the multiverse, and things like that. And this thing is quite nicely written with no plot holes. Even explains things that people have been like, well, if the TVA exists, how did this all this other shit happen and stuff like that? Well, it's because like the prime timeline was supposed to play out this certain way. And I think they do a really good job at kind of adding that extra context to the history of the MCU, along with adding subtle things like with Old Man Loki on why Old Man Steve Rogers would not have been pruned in an alternate timeline because his impact would have been low to minimal. So he's not actually altering the prime timeline of that branch reality that he's in. So there's not a reason to snip it. One of the head writers of this show is one of the head writers from Rick and Morty. So I already kind of had an idea of like, this is going to be really peak science fiction, because if you don't watch Rick and Morty, you got to watch it if you love sci-fi, because they deal with a lot of really big concepts and explain them in a very easy to digest way. Also, as a side note, that writer is who is writing Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie. So I'm very excited to see what that kind of creative collaboration is going to do. But the show sets up Kang the Conqueror, who's played by Jonathan Majors, who got his start in Lovecraft Country, which I actually found out got canceled, which is really sad because that is one of the best things I had seen on HBO, especially. So that's kind of frustrating. But they set up his character of Kang the Conqueror, who's going to be the lead villain in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. But the whole idea is that, you know, he's kept the multiverse at bay, the multiverse war, because he's allowed this prime timeline to exist. He created the TVA to always snip branch realities, because the more Kangs you have, the more Kangs want to be in charge. But Sylvie at the end obviously kills or chooses not to continue the job of Kang the Conqueror and kills him, which allows the multiverse to break apart. And so to the people online who just do not understand how the cause and effect works, the only reason why the spell and everything was able to fail and Doctor Strange in No Way Home is because of the events of Loki. If they had not happened and Sylvie had allowed Kang's mission to still continue, No Way Home would have happened because things would have been pruned. So like, it's just very frustrating being online sometimes when people just fail to grasp the simplest of things.
Fair enough.
Oh, I have to pick a loser too.
You do.
I guess my loser is Malignant.
Yeah.
My reason for this is because Malignant caused 2 horror movies to not be great. Malignant was James Wan's callback to the horror genre after having a really cool impact with the Conjuring films. And he brought something that was campy, that I don't think was intended to be campy. Wasn't scary at all, had the worst dialogue, the dumbest twist. It was literally such a waste of time. It reminded me of a trash horror film in the era of The Ring. Like, The Ring is a good movie, but there were a lot of just like D-level horror movies of that era, and Malignant slides right into that era of horror. But because he made that movie, that also meant that Conjuring 3 was directed by the director of La Llorona, which is the worst of all of the Conjuring universe movies to be spun off of. So his choice to do Malignant over coming back for The Conjuring 3 gave us one of the shittiest horror movies I've ever seen, and gave us such a limp dick energy for a movie that should have been awesome, because I love the Conjuring movies.
Yeah, that movie was just downright dog shit. It was so bad. It had no right being made.
Exactly.
I think in general, we could probably say that about almost everything that came out on HBO Max. I mean, if you really want to boil it down, Dune was incredible. I really liked Kong versus Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, all of the same day releases were not worth your time.
Yeah.
There's a reason, like it totally makes sense now why Warner Brothers said, hey, we're going to do same day release on HBO Max. Well, it's because your movies sucked. Like they shouldn't have even been in a theater. It's been very, very disappointing.
Yes. All right, Tim, give us your last round of
last round of picks here. I talked about this briefly on a previous podcast, but Mayor of Easttown on HBO Max was a contender for the best thing I watched all year. And that's really surprising to me because it's led by Kate Winslet. Doesn't feel like something I would be really into. It's Kate Winslet and Evan Peters as the two leads for that show. And it is a small town murder mystery that hits all of the right notes. It's legitimately funny at times. It's sad. And it's one of those whodunits where you literally go back and forth until the last scene on who you think the actual killer is. Mayor of Easttown, I think they should clean up at the awards for the year. Like it's that good. It's high quality. It looks really good. Kate Winslet is absolutely incredible in the lead role. Evan Peters, absolutely incredible in the role that he's in. Mayor of Easttown is can't miss TV. So if you're looking for something to watch, if you have HBO Max, watch Mayor of Easttown. It is absolutely worth the admission.
It's good to know. I actually thought that was an Apple TV show.
No.
I will watch it.
It's definitely worth it. It kind of feels like Defending Jacob, which is a show that I've raved about on Apple TV. I think I maybe liked Mayor of Easttown a little bit better because, I don't know, Defending Jacob feels like once you've watched it once, there's no need to ever watch it again. It's just one of those very specific, like twisty shows that once you understand the twist, it loses a lot of its allure. Mayor of Easttown is not that way. So definitely check out Mayor of Easttown when you guys get a chance.
Okay.
Will do.
All right. I did not read this book, but it is one of the most hyped books of the past few years. My wife was absolutely obsessed with the book, and the full-length feature movie came out and quickly dropped on Netflix after. The Woman in the Window. And when I say this is a bad movie, I mean that this is the worst movie that I've seen in several years. It is the worst movie I've seen, and it's shocking because it has an absolutely ridiculous cast. So you go into this movie, hype book, big name actors and actresses throughout the entire film, and it's a coherent mess. I literally can't tell you what's going on because the storyline makes no sense. It's that jumbled. And when I say all-star cast, I mean Amy Adams, Anthony Mackie, Gary Oldman, Julianne Moore. That's like your top four people right out of Wyatt Russell right there. Like five really big names, Amy Adams and Gary Oldman and Julianne Moore. That's like, those are huge names. And man, this movie is a train wreck. It is absolutely terrible. And what's even more mind-blowing, going back to what we've been talking about with Netflix and having this idea of making content for the sake of content, they're making a spin-off off of it. And so it's really confusing to hear like, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And then Netflix picks it up for a spin-off almost instantly. So Woman in the Window, if you were a fan of the book, absolutely skip this movie. If you've never even heard of this, that's even better. I mean, it is that bad. I would have, so as a joke with our patrons, we watched Velocipaster last year.
Mm-hmm.
That movie was not good. That movie was bad, but you knew it was bad going into it. It was campy. It was supposed to be bad. That movie was better than Woman in the Window.
Wow.
It's that bad. So Woman in the Window, worst thing I saw in 2021, and it's not even close.
Dang.
Damn. Okay. Fucking noted.
All right. Let's jump into my last thing. I'm going to do a little bit of a change up here because I thought somebody would say this, but they didn't. So I'm going to say it. The Suicide Squad, I think, was a real winner this year. James Gunn shows how great of a writer-director he is. He really shines with this sequel, soft reboot, whatever you want to call it, to Suicide Squad with The Suicide Squad. Idris Elba's great. John Cena's even great. Like, all the actors are really good in this movie. It's funny. It's full of action. You care about what's going on. It's like the complete opposite of the original Suicide Squad. Really just shows just how good, just how good James Gunn is at telling an ensemble story. We really enjoyed it, and this is another one I think that dropped on HBO Max that I think would have been worth your time, but like you said, there's really only a handful out of that that's worth your time. I really think that that's a winner, just because it's kind of was James Gunn after all his controversy and being fired from Guardians. He comes out with this movie. He's rehired for Guardians 3 around the same time that he's getting hyped for this movie, and it just really was a win for him, and it really was a win for DC because they've been struggling lately. It's no secret that we're not huge fan of Zack Snyder's stuff on this podcast, even though there's a ton of Zack Snyder fanboys out there. We don't think that content is good. But man, this is the type of DC content that we want. The Suicide Squad. It was so good. So
I almost put the Snyder cut on my loses because the biggest loser is this guy right here. Because he watched it for all 8 hours.
I did not. I only got a third of the way in. I was like, nope, no more.
I'm glad you put that on your list because I think that was my biggest surprise of
I agree.
2021.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It was the biggest surprise.
Yeah, I didn't expect to be interested in a John Cena Peacemaker show, and that drops in a week or 2 weeks.
I think so. Yeah,
I can't wait. I'm watching day one when it comes out because of how good he was in the role and what they did with the character.
For sure. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see what they do with it. So, all right, and my last loser, I'm gonna pull this out. Venom: Let There Be Carnage.
Oh, you actually watched it?
I did. I took my son to see it because he is 11 and he likes those movies. He doesn't understand quality yet. He just understands superheroes. I like Venom, so I'm going to like this show. He's very innocent, and sometimes viewing things through his eyes is a breath of fresh air. But in this case, I could not get down on his level. This movie is not very good. Proves that Sony really can't deliver high quality Marvel content. We're all really chomping at the bit to get Andrew back in his version of Spider-Man, but then in the back of my head, and I know your guys' head too, at what cost will that be? Because Sony continues to fall flat on their other Spider-Man properties. And this just kind of proves it. It's just Carnage. I'm spoiling it. Carnage dies, so we're one and done with Carnage. Yeah. Why?
That's so stupid.
Why introduce Carnage just to kill him? I'm just really not into this version of Eddie Brock and Venom. It's just a little too off for me. And yeah, I don't know.
You need Venom alive to even have Toxin, which is also a fan favorite symbiote.
They set that up. He's probably going to be... Toxin is probably made in this movie, and then Carnage dies. So
that's fucking stupid. Avi Arad. I hate Avi Arad.
We thank him. No Way Home would not have been possible without Avi Arad. We just really thank his dedication to Spider-Man and all the properties.
Yeah, if there's anything to be scared of Andrew coming back to the Sonyverse, it's Avi Arad jizzing all over the contract.
Yeah, I mean, we can only hope that the rumors are true, that he's signing a multi-picture deal and that he is the only way he's signing this contract is to have creative control. Andrew, that is. Because Andrew really understands Spider-Man. I love Andrew not only for his performance as Peter Parker, but when you see interviews with him talking about Peter Parker, like there's that famous clip of him at a con where he dressed up like Spider-Man and waited in line to talk at a mic, and he like took off his mask, and everybody's like, holy shit, it's Andrew Garfield. And he like wrote down this speech to talk. I think they were talking to Stan Lee about what Spider-Man means to him. Like, he just gets it, man, and he's such a good actor. So he needs his time in the sun, and I'm super scared that Sony's going to ruin it. But so that does it for our top 3 and bottom 3 of the year. Some honorable mentions. I'll start us off real quick. We don't spend a lot of time talking about games on here. I know we always talk about how we want to talk about games, but we never quite make it. Maybe 2022 can be a year where we talk about some games. But I bought and played a PlayStation, I think it's PlayStation exclusive. It might be on PC as well. But it's called Cana, Bridge of Spirits. It is a gorgeous little game. It's kind of like Dark Souls Light. You go around, you fight areas full of corrupted spirits, and then you fight bosses. And the whole point is to find this corruption that's causing the spirits of this town to not be able to pass on. And the design is similar to like Pixar. It's very cute and bright. It's a very light gaming experience, but it's challenging when you fight the bosses. And I don't know, it was kind of a breath of fresh air after coming off of God of War and Spider-Man and some of these super intense games. But yeah, if you're into games, if you have a PlayStation, Cana is definitely a standout for 2021 for me.
That was I still haven't played it yet, or I still haven't bought it yet, but that's one that has been kind of like in my cart for like 6 months because it looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's cute, it's fun, so definitely worth your time. As far as just quick other honorable mentions, just to list some things, not even to talk about them. Midnight Mass was great. We talked about Loki, WandaVision, Hawkeye, all the Marvel stuff's been really good. Bad Batch dropped this year. It was the sequel to Clone Wars. That ended up being really good. I wasn't super excited about it, but it ended up being real good. Invincible, the animated Robert Kirkman show, that was great. Sweet Tooth, I think we might have been a little torn on Sweet Tooth, but I really liked Sweet Tooth.
Loved it. It's peak.
Did we all like it? For some reason, I thought maybe we did.
I haven't watched it.
He hasn't watched it. That's why.
That's what it was. Okay. Yeah, Sweet Tooth was great. I cannot wait for season 2. And of course, Star Wars Visions came out this year, which is a realization of a nerd combination that we never thought would happen with anime and Star Wars. So,
yeah.
You guys got some honorable mentions you want to throw out?
For me, honestly, Insomniac's Spider-Man Miles Morales was so good. So I gotta be honest.
I looked it up, and it says it came out in 2020.
It did?
Came out in like December, I think, of 2020.
So
really?
It's technically a 2020 game, but you can still honorably.
I'm still gonna talk about it. So I definitely played it in 2021. I gotta be really honest with those who are listening with us. As a comic book reader, I never vibed with Miles. It's not a mystery, or it's not unknown that Brian Michael Bendis, whenever he wrote Miles, like had kind of like an agenda and stuff. So it just didn't seem quite genuine for the character to be alive. And at the cost of killing Peter, at least I was happy that it was happening in the Ultimate Universe, but I know Clayton also held that version of Peter Parker pretty near and dear to his heart. But I just never vibed with the character very much. And then like you had Battle World that happened where they combined the Ultimate and the 616 universe, and they really start making this push for Miles to be this front man. And I had no issue with Miles existing as a character. It's like me as a fan was always rubbed the wrong way when it seemed to be for a while Miles could only exist at the detriment of Peter existing. And that's like why I started having this animosity against the character of like, I don't care if Miles exists, but like stop dogging on Peter and trying to make him go away and trying to make him go into the background and all this other shit just to make him be like the front man or whatever. But then the Spider-Verse came out. And for the first time, I adored Miles as a character. And I was like, no, there's something to this kid. Like I really enjoy who he is. And so to be able to play as him in Insomniac's version after kind of falling in love with him in the Spider-Verse, I'm completely charmed and I'm excited to see where the story goes in the PS5 story where we'll have Peter and Miles together. But I could have a full-fledged game with just Miles and I would be very, very happy. Which Corbin from 10 years ago probably would have been like, what the fuck are you on right now? Because I hated Miles as a character. But I love playing as him. There's a kind of a swagger to him whenever you're swinging and stuff, which is really cool because he's more youthful.
You're getting dangerously close to that infamous TikTok clip.
Huh?
You're getting dangerously close to that infamous TikTok clip.
But yeah, so for me, Spider-Man Miles Morales was definitely a highlight for my gaming of 2021.
Okay. Any other quick shout outs you want to do, or is that basically it?
Nothing that you hadn't already say or we haven't mentioned. Like Godzilla was definitely a charming movie. Sweet Tooth was really good. Captain Falcon, Winter Soldier should never be talked about ever again. But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good with what's been talked about.
Tim, you got any honorable mentions you want to throw out real quick?
Yeah, I'm going to give you 3 really, really quick ones. The best audiobook that I listened to in 2021 that was released in 2021 was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. He's the guy who did The Martian, so a really famous book. I think this is a book that if you're at all interested, you want to pick up the audiobook. To give you a quick summary of the book, it's about a school teacher who gets wrapped into this plot to save the planet from this new compound that seems to be draining energy from the sun. And while he is on his expedition to space, he teams up with an alien life force to try to save the world. And the book is incredibly well written. It's smart, but it does a really good job of breaking things down so you understand it. And the reason I think you want the audiobook is because the alien character speaks in tonal language. So it's more like musical notes that are coming through and he has to figure out how to decode them. It sounds really crazy, but it was an incredible book. And I just saw on Goodreads that it was voted the best book of 2021 overall. So if you're looking for a sci-fi book, definitely check out Project Hail Mary. My favorite book that I physically read, not listened to, was Billy Summers by Stephen King. It's the story of an assassin who's on his final job and everything goes to shit, as you'd imagine. So not your typical Stephen King story. It's definitely a well-grounded story about an assassin, but tons of heart. Definitely worth the time if you are looking for that kind of book. And my last honorable mention is actually a dud, and it was the video game that I was most excited for coming into this year. My family really loves Mario Party. On a Switch, that's what we play 75% of the time. Mario Party Superstars was an updated version of a Nintendo 64 game that I never really enjoyed on Nintendo 64 that came out for Nintendo Switch, and it's bad. They should have just done a DLC for the Mario Party that was created for the Nintendo Switch originally and added more maps. They failed to give you unique dice. One thing we love about Mario Party, the most recent version, each character has their own dice, so you kind of get to pick your character based on strategy. You don't get that in Mario Party Superstars. And there's also no co-op mode, which if you have a younger kid like me, Lexi wants to play and be on my team because I'm pretty good at the game. There's no co-op. It's all straight up head to head. So Mario Party Superstars is a definite skip in my eyes.
It's sad.
It is sad. All right. And lastly, really quick, we all agree on the overall winner for 2021. Corbin mentioned it at the top. Spider-Man No Way Home. We just had a podcast about it. This movie is really something special, and we all agree that this is the overall winner of 2021. I've seen it 3 times. It is still emotionally impactful, even the third time. When you reach a certain scene, like it's still, like I'm still crying. And like I've said in our podcast, I've kind of like teared up a little bit before movies, but I've never like had tears rolling down my cheek from a movie before. And it's third time in, still tear jerking. It's just phenomenal. What they accomplished in this movie is just spectacular. So
It's going to be really hard to beat that this year.
yeah,
If we have movies that beat No Way Home, then we've had a damn good year. Before No Way Home dropped, I thought Dune was the best movie we got this year, and it wasn't even close.
yeah,
And No Way Home blows past Dune.
It
And
does.
that's saying something. Those are 2 great movies, and No Way Home, it's no competition in my eyes.
I agree.
Yeah. It's great. It expertly tugs on nostalgia without patronizing or leaning too heavily into it as a tool. It does it in a meaningful way, meaning they bring Andrew and Toby back and they have something of substance that makes it worthwhile for them to be there, not just there for marketing's sake. So, so good.
Yeah, they so beautifully intertwine decades of, character connections, audience and character connections into this film. And it's basically universally loved. Like if you're hating on it, you're just being a dick to be a dick, Like nobody out there hates this movie.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a time where we were getting frustrated by all the rumors of what was going on in this movie, and we had tweeted out saying like, man, we're scared. It seems like there's too much going on. And then the composer, Michael Giacchino, actually responded to our tweet. It was like, you guys need to have faith. This is going to be a fun movie.
He was right.
And man, he was right. And he also did a great job at bringing in the other themes from Andrew and Toby's films to be woven into this one as well. So, man, it was exceptional. I am excited to see it again. I've now seen the Kingsman, so I feel like my shackles have been taken off. I am free to go see Spider-Man again. I just couldn't bring myself to see it again without seeing the Kingsman.
It's so fitting too that it came out almost at the end of the year. Like it just ends the year on such a great high note. It's just super fitting. So
definitely, totally agree.
So I don't want to derail us. I know we're over on time and trying to get out, but I've got to share this horror story real quick.
Oh shit.
One of my coworkers went to go see No Way Home for the first time last week. She's recently sat down, gone through the entire MCU for the first time over the course of the past 5 months or so. Okay, so never saw a superhero movie, has done the entire MCU, has done it right. She's gone through the shows, waited to go see No Way Home because she hadn't caught up in her MCU watch. So she binged the last few movies to go see No Way Home. She gets to the theater, small theater. She's sitting 4 or 5 rows back, she says. 10 or 15 minutes into the movie, a mom walks in with 2 kids. She says probably 4 or 5 years old. And she said the theater was packed, which was surprising to her. But she's like, it was as close to a sold-out movie as she's been to since the pandemic started. These kids were allowed to not only run around through the aisles, but actually were playing with toys on the sides of the screen. And like with a ball, they drop a ball and it roll across, and they would walk across the screen. First time she ever saw No Way Home. Think of how much time she devoted to the MCU to get to this point. These kids are coming down her aisle like, oops, I dropped a toy. Excuse me. Can you lift your feet up, please? Excuse me. Can you lift your feet up? And the mother is allowing them to play on, like, essentially on the elevated stage where you can see them and not see the entire screen. She said she had never been more upset or livid in her life.
Did anyone talk to staff?
Nobody said anything?
Nobody said anything. But
Nobody talked to staff?
everybody was grumbling. Everybody was grumbling, she said, but nobody went and said anything.
Dude, they needed somebody with balls in that theater. Like
she
big
said that one of them had like
somebody.
One of them had like a big truck of some sort that had like that. Thankfully, the mom turned the noise off, but it had lights all over it, and he would like rush it across the stage. And so like this truck with like sirens and lights just goes across your peripherals as you're trying to watch Spider-Man. Oh my gosh, I was so mad for her. There's
First
no
of
chance.
You trip the kids when they're walking past you.
I mean, there's no chance that I act like a civilized human in this situation.
No,
there's no chance.
No, never. You pay money.
Yes.
God, I
can't believe no one in the theater stood up. That's crazy.
That is insane to me.
I would have done that. The only thing she could think of is the movie was so good that people were afraid to get up and leave to go and grab somebody because they didn't want to miss something.
You get a refund and see it again. Like,
I mean, that's exactly what I'd do. I'd go out and say, if you guys can't handle this, I'm not even going to go back into the theater. Just give me another ticket. I'm just going to go see the next showing. Like, there's no way I would have sat through it.
Holy fucking shit.
I can't imagine as a parent letting my kid get up on the stage to play. And she's like, at first it was okay because they were like on the sides and you couldn't see them. But that's not how kids work. Like they start playing with each other and they slowly start inching towards each other. And before you know it, they're like standing up on the stage for moments. Just shocking and appalling.
I cannot imagine that anyone in our community that listens to us would be that kind of parent. But if you are the shittiest person to exist. And I would curb stomp you in a heartbeat.
If your kids aren't interested or ready to see that movie, I get it. Just get a babysitter.
Yep.
And I know babysitters are expensive, but you can't ruin the movie theater experience for a sold out theater so you can go see Spider-Man. You can't do that.
Yes. A movie theater is a shared experience. Your being there does not supersede everyone else's. If you've got a kid, that kid is going to be well behaved or you don't go. End of story. Dear God.
Still mad. I'm still livid.
That has my blood boiling because I would have gotten up. I was at a theater recently with Morgan, and it was actually like right when I started my testosterone treatment. And there was these kids sitting next to us that would not stop talking. And I fucking yelled at them. And one of the times I yelled at them, they ignored me. And I almost leapt into their chair. I almost got into an actual fist fight. And thankfully they didn't say anything more because I was going to go get staff. But there's been plenty of times where I've gotten up to complain about someone with staff, whether it's even like the volume not being at the right level in the theater, or it's a disruptive theater guest. You pay money for an experience, and you are owed that experience.
Yeah, and it's compounded. My frustration's compounded because we were talking about this over text the other day. We usually sit on the aisle, which is not where I would like to sit. I would like to sit, 2/3 of the way back and right in the middle. That's my sweet spot. But we sit in the middle because my kids have to go to the bathroom 3 or 4 times, and so does my wife. And the thought of us having to stand up during a movie to cross other people, and the fact that I could disrupt somebody for even a microsecond is so disgusting to me that we choose terrible seats so that we can do that without burdening anybody else. And then you have other people who are like, don't care what I'm going to do. My kids can do whatever they want. I don't care about anybody's experience. I don't understand how somebody can have that mindset.
That's crazy to me. Mm-hmm. Dear God.
Okay. Rant done.
Ooh.
All right. Well, that does it for this week's The Noticer. We thank you for going along this 2021 journey with us. Did you agree with our picks? Are some of these on your winners or losers lists? What else did you think was a winner or loser? Let us know over on the social medias. Remember, we've got a giant Facebook group. It's our most prominent community. extremely active, full of memes. Just search the Nerdosphere in Facebook and click join to join. You can also find us anywhere else by just searching the Nerdosphere. Remember to rate and review if you're enjoying our content. Those ratings and reviews really help us get in front of new viewers. And again, if you are on Spotify, you can now do this. So scroll on down and give us a rating. If you really like what we do, hop over to patreon.com/thenerdosphere, where you can learn how to support the show monetarily for as little as $1 a month and earn exclusive perks. If you cannot afford $1 a month, your listen is all that we ask for, and a share would be greatly appreciated as well, because if you like our content, I guarantee you know someone else who would like our content. And what makes consuming content better? Sharing with those we love. That does it for this week. We will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.